Progress.
So at the beginning of this year, in the beginning of Tafshin Pei, we started a new program. We called it Pesacheinu Megadim, where we tried to connect the beginning and the end of each Parsha. And it was an adventure because we did not know where it would take us. We didn't know if we would make it beyond Parshas Bereshis. And I remember when I was up to Parshas Truma, I met Rav David Cohen, the Rav of Gvul Yavitz, and I told him about this idea that we had about connecting the beginning and end of the Parsha, and I asked him if it's a valid form of drush. So he said, well, you have anything on it? Like, were you able to connect the beginning and the end of the Parsha? So I said, I'm up to Truma. So I said, is it a valid form of drush? He said, no. I said, no? He said, it's not drush, it's pshat. It's pshat. You see in the Gemara says the Torah begins with chesed, it ends with chesed, that it's pshat, it's not a drush. So I never dreamed we would make it until V'zois Haberacha. This is the last Parsha. But we still have a lot to do because we have to connect the beginning and end of V'zois Haberacha. We have to connect the beginning and end of Sefer Devarim. And also we've been doing it for the Megillos and Koheles. I'll save for a different occasion, connecting the beginning and end of the Torah. But that's easy, I'll tell you why. Because everyone and their third cousin has the Torah to connect the end of the Torah to the beginning. So, by the same token, whatever they've said to connect the end to the beginning, well, that's also a connection between the beginning and the end. So, there are literally thousands of connections between the beginning and the end of the Torah. And here we go. My typist was apparently not working on Chol Hamoed, so you get the raw manuscript over here. And also, I don't know if I ever showed you. I have this insignia for Pesacheinu Megadim. I make a doorway at the beginning. Okay, for some reason the graphic designer takes it out every week. I don't know. They obviously don't like my design. But don't worry, if it's going to be back on the cover of the Sefer. There's going to be some. It's going to say, V'al Pesacheinu Megadim. Anyway. V'zois Haberacha Shabirach Moshe Ish Ha'elokim. Moshe is referred to as the man of God, Ish Ha'elokim. The parsha ends, L'chol hayod hachazaka u'l'chol ha'oisos v'hamoivsim asher asa Moshe le'enei kol Yisrael. What does Rashi bring? Rashi brings le'enei kol Yisrael that Moshe Rabbeinu by breaking the luchos, Hashem was hiskima das HaKadosh Baruch Hu ledatoi. Hashem agreed with with his decision. The Gemara tells us one of the three things that Moshe Rabbeinu did on his own that Hashem agreed with. In other words, that he on his own, without being instructed to do so, figured out what Hashem wanted. He was mechavein datoi to das hamakom, and Hashem was maskim with him, was that he broke the luchos. So, not every individual receives a haskama from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could get a haskama from your local Orthodox rabbi. You could get a haskama from big people. But to get a haskama from Hashem, that is reflective of being an Ish Elokim. So therefore the parsha begins that Moshe Rabbeinu was Ish Elokim, and it ends by showing in what dimension, in what way was Moshe Rabbeinu Ish Elokim, that he was able to make a decision, and Hashem was maskim datoi ledas hamakom. Okay. Now, here's another idea. This is maybe my favorite one. The parsha ends, and really the Torah ends, that Moshe broke the luchos. Why did Moshe break the luchos? Who asked him to do that? So Moshe, the Medrash says, wait a second. The Jewish people married Hashem. The luchos was the kedushin. If they're now going to serve the egel, that's akin to znus. But if I break the luchos, then I render the kedushin null and void, and then they're like a penuya shezinsa, and not like an eishasish shezinsa. Then they're like a single woman who's mezaneh, not like a married woman. So the parsha begins, Hashem mi Sinai baha, that God came from Sinai. Rashi says, Kechasan hayotze lekras kala. So there's a marriage here. Moshe says, I got to do something about this, because if they're going to serve the egel, it's like znus. So Moshe Rabbeinu has to take the luchais and break them to render the marriage null and void. And that is an amazing connection between the beginning and end of the parsha. The beginning of the parsha talks about Hashem marrying the Jewish people, and that was the impetus for what it says at the end of the parsha, that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchais. Then, yesterday I was having some confusion, because I was positive I saw in Rashi in the beginning of the parsha that when Moshe Rabbeinu blessed the Jewish people before he died, he had to ward off the Malach HaMavos. He told the Malach HaMavos, wait. Most people can't do that. It's not like, waking up your kids in the morning where the kids, 5 more minutes, 7 more minutes, 2 more minutes, 90 seconds, just 30 seconds, 5 minutes. You can't tell that to the Malach HaMavos. Malach HaMavos, there's no snooze button on the Malach HaMavos. However, I thought Rashi said that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gave the bracha to Klal Yisrael before his petira, he held off the Malach HaMavos. And then I'm opening up a chumash to write this. I couldn't find it. I took out, then I realized not every chumash has this comment. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I was mamish going out of my kalim, because I knew I wanted to connect this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu warded off the Malach HaMavos to something in the end of the parsha. It's in a Gilyon in Rashi. Most Rashis do not have it. I have one chumash that has this comment of Rashi on the words Lifnei Moisai, that the Malach HaMavos came to take Moshe's soul. Moshe said, no, I got to bless them first. That's why it says Lifnei Moisai. Therefore, what do we see from here? That Moshe Rabbeinu obviously had shlita over the Malach HaMavos. So I want to say, b'siyata d'shmaya, if Moshe had dominion over the Malach HaMavos, that's why he was able to break the luchais. Because we know that once Hashem gave us the luchais, the Malach HaMavos was finished. Charus al haluchais al tikri charus ela cherus mi Malach HaMavos. So if Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchais, then he puts the Malach HaMavos back into business. Well, Moshe Rabbeinu is in charge of the Malach HaMavos when he gets a job, when he doesn't get a job. You think every average guy could come and, if the Malach HaMavos is fired, Moshe Rabbeinu could hire the Malach HaMavos? Yeah, you see he can. If Moshe broke the luchais, that means he has control over the Malach HaMavos. So that means the beginning and end of the parsha also, the beginning of the parsha we see Moshe Rabbeinu says, Malach HaMavos, wait for me. And the end of the parsha, he breaks the luchais and he says, Malach, okay, come back. So that's a very interesting commonality between the beginning and end of the parsha. Here's another idea. Miminoi eish daslamei. From his right hand came the fiery law. Even though the Torah was so beloved before Hashem, that he gave it with his right hand, and it was burning like fire, and Rashi says in a second shot, he gave it from the fire. That did not stop Moshe Rabbeinu in any way from breaking it. In other words, the Torah begins, Parshas V'Zois HaBracha begins, the glory of the Torah, the power of the Torah, the fiery nature of the Torah, and yet, even so, it didn't, Moshe Rabbeinu was not daunted. If he felt it needed to be broken, he's going to break it. Here's another idea. The parsha begins that Moshe blesses the people. But the only thing is, there's one person who never got a bracha. Did you know that? That Moshe gave everyone a bracha. You know who didn't get a bracha? Moshe. Who gave Moshe a bracha? So the parsha ends, L'chal ha'isais v'hamoifsim asher L'chal hayad ha'chazaka L'chal ha'isais Moshe asher asa Moshe L'yeinei kol Yisrael. Rashi says L'yeinei kol Yisrael, that Moshe broke the luchais. And Hashem told Moshe, Yasher koichacha. What's Yasher koichacha? It's a compliment? It's not a compliment. It's a bracha. Your koyach should be strong. So the parsha begins, Moshe was mavarich klal Yisrael, and it ends, and midah keneged midah, Moshe ha-mavarich yizbarich. Hashem said, you were mavarich klal Yisrael, I'll give you a bracha. Yasher koichacha. By the way, it's interesting that Rashi says that Hashem told Moshe Yasher koichacha. There is no remez at all in the pasuk that Hashem commented anything when Moshe broke the luchos. All it says is La'inei kol Yisrael. So the Mizrahi says, well, if the pasuk is complimenting Moshe, it's talking about Moshe's greatness, then how do we see the greatness of Moshe in breaking the luchos? The answer is, Rashi has to add that we know Hashem said, Asher shibarta, Yasher koichacha sheshibarta. Okay. Here's also a very nice connection. Rashi learns the end of the parsha, Ulechayel hayarach hazaka, Ulechayel. Here, let's take a look at the words of Rashi. Rashi learns that Ulechayel hayarach hazaka, Ulechayel hamayra hagadol, Asher asa Moshe, V'yeinei kol Yisrael, L'chol hayarach hazaka, that Moshe was makabel the luchos. L'chol hamoira hagadol, all the great miracles in the midbar. Le'einei kol Yisrael, that he broke the luchos. The Sforno has a completely different take on this. The Sforno says this is all going back on Laikam Navi Oid Bi Yisrael K'Moshe Asher Yida'oi Hashem Panim Al Panim. There was never a prophet like Moshe that knew God face to face. Says the Sforno, wait a second, did Moshe always know God face to face? We know the first encounter that Hashem had with Moshe was at the burning bush. And what did Moshe Rabbeinu do at the burning bush? He hid his face. So that means Moshe didn't always know Hashem face to face. So now we're bothered by a kasha. We know in their first meeting, Moshe did not know God face to face. So what happened now that Moshe knows Hashem face to face? The answer is, L'chol ha'osos v'ha'moipsim. By Moshe performing the miracles in Mitzrayim, and Ulechol hayarach hazaka, and by giving us the Torah, and Le'inei kol Yisrael, when Klal Yisrael saw Moshe Rabbeinu from a distance go up to the mountain into the Arafel, that's when he was elevated to be a koine, the madrega of knowing Hashem panim el panim. Then Moshe Rabbeinu gained karnei hoid le'einei kol Yisrael. Now we know why Moshe was zoicha to know Hashem panim el panim. Meaning the last two psukim are a explanation for that which it says that Moshe knew Hashem panim el panim. How? By doing the miracles of Mitzrayim, by giving us the Torah, and going into the Arafel and emerging with the karnei hoid. That's what made Moshe, that's what elevated him to the madrega panim el panim. That connects beautifully to the beginning of the parsha. The beginning of the parsha says Moshe was Ish Elokim. He's the man of God. Nobody else is called Ish Elokim. How did he become an Ish Elokim? The answer is by performing the miracles of Mitzrayim, by giving us the Torah, by going into the Arafel and gaining the karnei hoid. Moshe Rabbeinu was zoicha to become the Ish Elokim. Tam v'nishlam, with the help of the Rebbeinu Shalom, be'ezras tzureinu v'gay aleinu, na chazkeinu v'ametzeinu l'eschadesh kenesher ne'uri chenu. May Hashem strengthen us and renew our interest and our ability to learn Torah, to understand new dimensions of Torah when we begin Be'ezus Hashem Sefer Bereshis. We should be able to begin like we never saw it before. Okay, so these are some connections between the beginning and end of V'zois HaBracha. But I'm not done.